I wasn't supposed to be here. I could feel the tension in the air the moment I stepped through the door of my Uncle Charles's retirement gala. The plush ballroom, filled with sparkling chandeliers and expensive wine glasses, looked like the kind of event someone might sell their soul to attend. But me? I didn't belong here. I almost turned around right then and there, but something kept me in place. Maybe it was the obligation. Maybe it was the fact that I had actually received an invite for once, even though it felt more like a token gesture. I was the lost cause in the family after all, the one who didn't really fit the picture of success that my uncle adored. Still, I walked in. At the reception table, I paused. There, right in front of me, was my name tag. I leaned in and my fingers froze over the delicate gold letters. Elena, the lost cause. A cruel, deliberate jab. The tag was meant to humiliate me. I looked around the room, my blood beginning to boil. The laughter I heard echoed from the cocktail area, the sound of Vanessa's high-pitched giggles cutting through the air. I could feel her eyes on me before I even turned to face her. She stood there with that smug look on her face, her glass of wine held high, watching me like she'd won some kind of battle. Vanessa had always been like that, the one who never missed a chance to mock my struggles. It was her specialty, the way she'd put me down without saying a word. The way she made sure everyone else could see me as the screw-up. My fingers tightened around the name tag, but I didn't let it show. Not here, not now. Reacting was exactly what she wanted. I put the tag down on the table, my heart pounding against my chest. That was it. The last straw. The moment I realized I was done letting them control me, done trying to prove that I belonged in a family that treated me like an afterthought. As I walked away from the table, the weight of that damn name tag still pressed on me. But I refused to let it break me. Tonight, I would make sure they all saw me differently. The lost cause wasn't lost. I had a plan. The gala was buzzing with the kind of energy that only rich people surrounded by wine and expensive hors d'oeuvres could muster. People mingled in designer suits and cocktail dresses, exchanging fake smiles and hollow compliments. I felt out of place among the polished crowd. I moved through the sea of suits and silk, trying to make myself invisible. The last thing I wanted was to stand out, especially when all I could think about was the name tag, the label they'd slapped on me for years. Vanessa and Ryan were in the center of it all, as always. Vanessa was showing off the diamond bracelet she'd just inherited from one of her many rich boyfriends, and Ryan was talking about some overseas venture like he was the next big thing in business. They both had their audience, a circle of well-dressed men and women laughing at jokes they didn't understand. But what hit me hardest was Charles, my uncle, the man I used to idolize, standing in the middle of it all, looking like a king surrounded by his perfect heirs. He barely spared me a glance as I passed by. When our eyes briefly met, there was no warmth, no recognition of all the years I'd spent at his side, no acknowledgement that I was his niece, his family. He just looked past me, like I was an insignificant detail in a story he'd already forgotten. I grabbed a drink from a passing waiter, my hands shaking more than I wanted to admit. The cool glass felt like the only thing grounding me at that moment. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the fact that Charles didn't care to recognize me, or the fact that Vanessa and Ryan seemed to be living lives that had always felt just out of my reach. It wasn't supposed to be this way. I had worked hard for everything I had. I fought for every inch of success, for every tiny bit of independence. And still, they treated me like I didn't matter. The laughter from Vanessa's group echoed in the background, a stark reminder of how far removed I was from this world. But I wasn't going to let it show. I wasn't going to let them see how much it stung. I had spent years trying to be what they wanted, trying to earn their approval. But tonight, I realized something. I wasn't here for them anymore. I was here for me. The room felt colder now, despite the warmth of the crowd. I barely noticed the laughter or the conversations swirling around me. My mind had slipped backward into memories I had tried so hard to bury. It was all so clear now, how everything shifted after Charles remarried. It was as if one day I was part of his world and the next, I was a ghost haunting the edges of it. I had been just a little girl when I moved into Charles's house. My parents had died in a car accident when I was barely 10, and Charles took me in. For a time, I was grateful. He treated me like his own, or at least, that's how it felt back then. I'd watch him with pride as he went about his business, telling me stories of his younger days and teaching me about all the things he loved: art, business, the world. But all that changed when Teresa came into the picture. She wasn't like my mom. She was sharp, polished, always dressed in the most expensive clothes. I could see from the very beginning how much she wanted Charles, how she wanted everything that came with him. But she also wanted something else: control. She brought her own children into the house, Vanessa and Ryan, and that was when everything fell apart. I didn't have to share my room before, but suddenly I was shuffled to the attic. I didn't have to help with chores before, but now I was expected to do them all. I was just a kid, and I spent hours every day cleaning the house, doing laundry, making sure everything was perfect for their new family, while Vanessa and Ryan did whatever they wanted. When I complained, my uncle would shrug it off. "It's just a phase, Elena. You'll get used to it," he'd say. But I didn't want to get used to it. I didn't want to be the family servant, the one who was never good enough, never noticed. And then came the day I knew I was nothing more than an afterthought. I was 15 when I found out that Charles had used the inheritance my parents left me to fund Ryan's college education. My own money. The one thing my parents had left me with, the one thing I had that was truly mine. And it was gone. I confronted him about it, standing in his office with my fists clenched, tears streaming down my face. "You used my money?" I demanded. "You didn't even ask?" Charles just looked at me, cold and distant, like I was the one in the wrong. "It's for Ryan's future," he said flatly. "You'll be fine. You'll figure it out." Fine? I wasn't fine. I was a kid. I didn't know how I was going to pay for my own future, let alone fight the system they had built to keep me at the bottom. But in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't part of the family anymore. I was just a burden. I left that night, packed a suitcase, grabbed what little I could carry, and walked out the door. I was 18 with nowhere to go, no money, no real family to turn to. That was the moment Charles stopped being my guardian, my protector. He was just another man, one who had failed me. He gave up on me the moment I stopped being useful. I had nothing but my anger to carry me through those first few years. I moved into a dingy apartment, found a waitressing job, and started taking night classes. It wasn't much, but it was mine. But what still gnawed at me, what still twisted like a knife in my gut, was how easily they had turned their backs on me. Vanessa and Ryan got everything: college, vacations, new clothes, while I struggled alone, fighting to build something out of the scraps they left behind. That moment, when I walked out of Charles's house, was when I truly became invisible to them. It's funny how life can feel like you're stuck in the same place for a long time, even though you're actually moving forward. For years, it felt like I was standing still, waiting for a break, waiting for a miracle, but I didn't get one. So I made my own. I worked hard, sometimes too hard. The waitressing job barely paid the rent, but I didn't care. I wasn't asking for handouts anymore. I wasn't waiting for anyone to come save me. I took freelance design gigs late into the night, sketching logos for small businesses and designing websites for people who could barely afford me. But it was something. I was building a life brick by brick. While Vanessa was flying to Paris for a work trip and Ryan was partying through college, I was living in a cramped apartment, eating cheap takeout and barely scraping by. I remember looking at the cracked mirror above my sink one night, my hair unwashed and my eyes red from lack of sleep, and wondering if this was it, if this was how my life would turn out. But then I graduated. 4 years of sleepless nights and barely making rent, and I did it. I walked across the stage in a cheap gown that I'd bought secondhand and accepted my diploma. Alone. Not a single family member was there. I had sent out invitations to Charles, to my parents, to Vanessa and Ryan, but of course none of them showed up. Why would they? They weren't there for me when I needed them most. So why would they care about a piece of paper that said I made it? The graduation ceremony was one of the loneliest moments of my life, but it was also one of the proudest. I had done it. By myself. I can't explain it, but that day shifted something in me. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was determined. I wasn't going to let them win. They thought I'd never make it, that I'd be just another failure in their eyes. But I wasn't. I wasn't their lost cause anymore. And I finally saw what they never did. I was capable of far more than they could imagine. I built a design studio from nothing, taking on clients who respected me and actually paid me for my work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. It was real. A few months after graduation, Charles sent me an email, one of those formal, detached messages that made me feel like I was just another business transaction. It said something like, "We were just wondering how you were doing, and if you're open to catching up sometime." I didn't reply. I didn't need his approval. I didn't need any of their validation. They had already shown me who they were, and I wasn't about to beg for scraps from a table they never invited me to sit at. But I couldn't lie. The loneliness still crept in at night. I missed having a family. I missed the idea of it. Even though I had built my own life, even though I had made it, that old feeling of being left out lingered. I was stronger, yes. More independent, yes. But I was also tired. Tired of pretending I didn't care. Tired of trying to prove something to people who didn't deserve my time. One night I sat in front of my laptop drafting up a new business proposal for a client, and I got a message. It was from Ryan. I almost didn't open it. He was always the one who made me feel like I didn't measure up. But curiosity won over. The message was short, to the point. Hey, Elena, Uncle Charles is retiring. We're throwing a party for him next week. You should come. It's at the country estate. I stared at the screen for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. After everything. After all the years they had made me feel like I was nothing. After everything I'd been through alone, now they wanted me to come to his retirement party? I could feel the old anger bubbling up, mixing with the bitterness and the hurt. They still thought they could just pull me back in, treat me like an afterthought, then expect me to fall in line. But I wasn't that person anymore. I sat back, closed my laptop, and didn't reply. Instead, I put on a playlist, poured myself a glass of wine, and let the silence fill the space around me. For the first time in a long time, I felt a real sense of peace. This was my life now, and if they didn't want to be part of it, that was their loss. A week later, I was back at the gala, the retirement party I had almost forgotten about. I didn't know why I'd agreed to come. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was because I thought it might be my last chance to make a statement, or maybe deep down I just wanted to prove something to myself. The ballroom was just as grand as I remembered. Towering marble columns, extravagant floral arrangements, and gold-trimmed chandeliers that gleamed under the soft lighting. The guests moved around in groups, laughing and exchanging stories like they hadn't a care in the world. Everyone was here to celebrate Charles's decades of hard work, and yet the weight of it all felt so hollow to me. I walked through the crowd, my heels clicking on the polished floor, trying to keep my focus. I saw Vanessa, practically glowing in a tailored dress, chatting with a group of businessmen. Ryan was off in the corner, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, looking like he was the most important person in the room. But when I passed by him, he didn't even look up. As I made my way to the bar, my eyes lingered on Charles, who stood at the center of a group of well-dressed guests, surrounded by people who probably saw him as some kind of hero. A man who had it all. Someone who had built an empire. But I knew the truth. His empire was built on the backs of people like me. People who were left behind. People who were ignored when they dared to stand up for themselves. I grabbed a drink and stood quietly at the edge of the room, watching it all unfold. The laughter felt like nails on a chalkboard. The fakeness of it all was suffocating. But I knew I had a choice. I could either stay quiet and let it continue or do something that would make them see me. Really see me. I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest. The anger was there, but it was different this time. It wasn't the rage of a girl who had been overlooked and ignored. It was the clarity of someone who had finally figured out who they were. Someone who had stopped trying to fit into a mold that didn't belong to them. Just then, I caught sight of Vanessa, who had taken a moment to step away from the crowd. She was standing near the entrance table, sipping on her wine, with a smug smile on her face. I knew exactly what she was thinking. She was waiting for me to react, to do something. She wanted to see me lose my composure. But instead of letting her get the satisfaction, I walked calmly toward the table. The moment I stepped closer, I saw the name tag again. The Lost Cause. Just sitting there, waiting for me to see it. Vanessa must have seen the way my eyes landed on it, because I could feel her gaze shift toward me. She raised an eyebrow, probably expecting me to explode. But I didn't. I picked up the name tag, held it in my hand, and looked her dead in the eyes. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, I folded it neatly and set it back down, my fingers brushing the edge of the table. Vanessa's smirk faltered for just a moment, and I felt a small, almost imperceptible victory. She was expecting a scene, but all I gave her was calm, a calm that unnerved her. Before she could say anything, I turned away, my drink in hand. I walked straight toward Charles, who was now engaged in a conversation with a group of his colleagues. I wasn't going to waste any more time pretending that I was okay with being treated like I was invisible. I stepped up to him, my voice steady and clear. Charles, I just wanted to congratulate you on your retirement. It's quite an achievement. He turned, surprised by my presence. His eyes narrowed slightly as if he couldn't quite place me. Oh, Elena, he said, his voice cool. I didn't expect to see you here. No one ever does, I replied. But I thought tonight might be a good time for a little change. I could see the faint flicker of recognition in his eyes, but it didn't last long. He shrugged, dismissing me without saying another word. That was it. It was the last time I would let him or anyone else in this room make me feel small. I wasn't a ghost in their world anymore, and I wasn't here for them. I was here for me. The room buzzed with conversation, laughter, and clinking glasses, a perfect facade of joy and celebration. But inside me, the calm I had carefully built began to shift. The anger, the frustration, all the years of being overlooked, of being used, simmered beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to break free. I glanced around, gathering my courage. The time had come. I walked toward the center of the room where Charles was still surrounded by his little circle of admirers. I didn't hesitate. I wasn't going to let this moment pass. I reached for a glass of champagne from a nearby waiter, tapping it lightly to get everyone's attention. At first, people looked at me, confused, but soon the murmurs died down. A silence spread through the crowd as more eyes turned toward me, waiting for whatever spectacle I was about to create. Charles's eyes flicked toward me, his brows furrowing in annoyance. He didn't know what to expect, and that made me smile inwardly. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves before raising my glass. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice strong, cutting through the room. Tonight we gather to celebrate Charles, a man who's worked hard to build his empire. But there's something I think we need to acknowledge. Charles shifted on his feet, his gaze hardening as I continued. For years, he's surrounded himself with people who admire him, people who bend to his expectations. But those of us who dare to forge our own path, those of us who refuse to fit into the mold he's created, we're left on the sidelines, invisible. The murmurs started, and I could feel the tension in the room growing. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others looked like they were waiting for someone to step in, to stop me. But I didn't care. I'm not here to congratulate Charles on his retirement, I continued, my eyes never leaving his face. I'm here to expose the truth. Charles values only those who meet his standards, those who never question his authority, those who play the game his way. I paused for a moment, letting my words sink in. I could feel their eyes on me, some judging, some uncertain, but I had their attention, and I wasn't finished. I've spent my life trying to prove I'm good enough for this family, trying to fit into a world that never cared about me. But not anymore. The lost cause label? Fine, let them call me that. But I am not the one who is lost. You are, I said, holding up the name tag, the words "the lost cause" printed clearly for everyone to see. Charles's face went white with fury, his eyes flashing as he stepped forward, but I didn't flinch. You've built this family on lies, on favoring those who play by your rules. But I'm done. I'm done playing along. I won't apologize for who I am or how I fought to survive in a world that doesn't care. Teresa, standing next to Charles, looked like she might faint. Vanessa and Ryan were both standing rigid, their faces unreadable. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I had finally said what I needed to say. I set the name tag back on the table with deliberate care, my gaze sweeping over the crowd. So, no, I'm not here to celebrate Charles, but I will celebrate myself. I will celebrate the fact that I'm no longer bound by your expectations. I've built my life without any of you, and I don't need your approval to know I'm worth more than any label you put on me. The room was still. Every person in that hall was holding their breath. It was a strange, almost electric silence, as if the air itself had thickened with the weight of what I'd just said. I turned to Charles one last time, my voice steady, without a trace of the girl I once was. This is the last time I'll ever allow you to treat me like I'm less than. You've lost me completely. Without waiting for his response, I turned and walked away, each step purposeful, each step filled with the weight of every year I'd spent fighting to be seen. I didn't look back. The silence that followed me was thick. But as I stepped out into the cool night air, the weight on my chest lifted. For the first time, I felt free. The family that had ignored me, they could stay behind, frozen in their world of pretense. Because I was walking away, and I was never looking back. The cool night air hit my face as I walked out of the gala, my heels clicking against the pavement. I didn't even look back at the glittering mansion behind me, at the chaos I had left in my wake. I didn't need to. I had said everything that had been building up inside me for years, and now it was over. I felt lighter, freer, as if I had shed a weight I'd been carrying for too long. For the first time in my life, I wasn't begging for their approval. I wasn't trying to earn a place in a family that had never made room for me. I had finally let go of all the anger, all the years of pretending to be someone I wasn't, just to fit into their mold. The car ride home was quiet, the hum of the engine almost comforting as I drove through the city streets. My hands gripped the wheel, but there was no tension, no tightness in my chest, just calm. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building, the familiar sight of it grounding me. This was my life. This was where I belonged. I didn't need to prove myself to anyone. I had made it on my own, without them, and it felt like victory. I turned off the car and sat for a moment, just taking it all in. The night was still, quiet, and for the first time I felt at peace. But then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Charles. My heart gave an involuntary lurch as I unlocked the screen. I almost didn't want to read it, but my fingers betrayed me. "Elena, we need to talk. Come back and we can sort this out. We're family, and you're making a mistake. Don't throw everything away over a moment of anger." I stared at the screen, my breath shallow. A mistake. That's how they saw it. They thought I'd come crawling back like I always had. That they could pull me in with their hollow promises, their empty words. But not this time. Not anymore. I stared at the message for a long moment, my mind racing with everything I had just left behind. And then, without hesitation, I hit delete. My phone buzzed again almost immediately. This time it was from Vanessa. I didn't even bother reading it. I knew it would be the same. A guilt trip, an ultimatum, a demand that I come back and fix things like I always did. I swiped it away and blocked her number. Another buzz. This one from Ryan. Same thing. I didn't even bother reading it. Same guilt. Same manipulation. I blocked him too. Each message I deleted, each number I blocked felt like an act of liberation. A declaration that I was done. Done with their expectations. Done with the family that only saw me as a tool to be used when they needed me. When the last message was deleted, I sat back in my seat and closed my eyes. The silence in my car was almost deafening, but in the best way possible. There was no one to answer to, no one to apologize to, no more trying to be the person they wanted me to be. I had done it. I had let go. The next morning, I woke up to more missed calls, more messages. But I didn't care. They weren't important. They didn't matter. I wasn't going back. The silence that followed in the next few weeks was more than just a lack of messages. It was confirmation that I had made the right choice. My life, my peace, was finally my own. I poured myself into work. My design studio started picking up, the contracts growing, my client list expanding. It was a busy time, but it was a good kind of busy. The kind that felt fulfilling, not draining. One night, as I sat at my desk, reviewing the details of a new project, I realized that I hadn't thought about them in days. There was no gnawing sense of loneliness, no ache in my chest. I had finally learned what it meant to be alone. Not lonely, not empty, but content, whole. I had spent so many years trying to fill a hole they had left in me, trying to be someone I wasn't. But now I was finally whole, and that was enough. And just like that, I knew it. I was free. Family to me was no longer defined by blood, it was defined by respect, and I had earned that respect, not from them, but from myself. The freedom tasted sweet, the future was mine, and for the first time I was excited for what it would bring. The weeks that followed were strangely peaceful. The silence from my family was louder than any words they could have said. No more phone calls from Charles, no more guilt trips from Vanessa, no more texts from Ryan. It felt like I had been cut off completely, but somehow, the absence of their demands was exactly what I needed. I poured myself into my work, letting it consume me. My design studio was growing, thriving even, and with every new project I took on, I felt stronger, more capable. I felt like I was finally moving forward, finally building a life that didn't revolve around the expectations of a family who had never really seen me. But then, one morning, I woke up to dozens of missed calls and texts. My phone buzzed relentlessly as I rolled over to check it, half dazed from sleep. The numbers were all familiar, but I didn't need to look at the names to know who they were from. Vanessa, Ryan, and of course, Charles. I groaned and rubbed my eyes, knowing exactly what this was. They weren't done. I sat up and grabbed my phone, scrolling through the messages. They all started with variations of the same theme. "Please call me back, we need to talk," and "We can fix this, you're making a mistake." I felt nothing. No anger, no frustration, just a dull ache in my chest. a nagging reminder that they still thought they could just pick up where we left off. As if all those years of manipulation and betrayal could just be erased with a phone call. But I had made my decision. I had severed ties and there was no going back. Still, I felt the old pang of obligation, that instinct to reply, to explain myself, to make them understand why I had done what I did. But I didn't owe them that anymore. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the text messages. And then I did something I hadn't been able to do before. I hit block on each of them, one by one. The immediate sense of relief was overwhelming. I'd been so afraid that I'd feel guilty that I'd second-guess myself. But instead, I felt free, and that freedom was intoxicating. Just as I thought I was done, a call came through from an unknown number. For a brief moment, I hesitated. It could have been a business call. It could have been something important. But deep down, I knew. I knew exactly who it was. I picked up the phone, my finger hovering over the button to decline, but then something inside me snapped. I answered. Hello? My voice was calm, steady. A pause. Then I heard it. Charles's voice, weak and pleading, as though he had practiced the words 1,000 times before calling me. Elena, please, can we talk? We need to fix this. Your mother is beside herself. She's been crying for days. You've got to understand, this is tearing us apart. I almost laughed. Tears? My mother? How typical. I took a breath and replied in the most measured tone I could manage. Charles, this isn't about fixing things. It's about what I've chosen for myself, and you should respect that. There was a brief silence on the other end, and I could feel the shift in his demeanor, his frustration bubbling up. You're being stubborn. This is not how family works. We've always supported you, always helped you. You owe us. I let his words hang in the air for a moment before responding, my voice firm. No, Charles, you owe me. You took everything from me, and I'm done being your backup. I'm done being the one you call when you need something. When you're done playing these games, maybe we can talk. But until then, I'm not coming back. There was no response, just silence on the other end. I felt no satisfaction in his defeat, no sense of vindication, just a quiet certainty that I had made the right choice. I'm hanging up now, I said, and before he could say another word, I pressed end call. The weight lifted from my chest, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I was at peace. My phone buzzed again a few minutes later, but I didn't need to look. I knew what it was. Another attempt, another guilt trip, another attempt to reel me back in. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned my phone off, slipped it into my bag, and walked out of my apartment. It was a beautiful day outside. Clear skies, the kind of day that makes you feel like anything is possible. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. As I walked down the street, my mind wasn't on the messages or the calls. It was on me, on my future. And I realized something in that moment. I had finally let go of all the years of resentment, all the years of trying to earn approval. And now, for the first time in my life, I was living for me. The phone calls and texts could keep coming, but I didn't need to answer them anymore, because I had finally found the one thing I'd been searching for: peace. Weeks passed, and the silence became louder than any argument could have been. No calls, no texts, no guilt trips. At first, it felt strange. The absence of their voices, the quiet space in my life where once there had been chaos. But as the days turned into weeks, it became something else. It became comfort. I woke up every morning feeling lighter, like the weight that had pressed down on me for so long was finally gone. I didn't have to answer to anyone. I didn't have to explain myself or apologize for my choices. My life was mine again. Work was busy, but in the best way possible. The design studio was flourishing, new projects rolling in with steady frequency. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. I had landed a major contract for a new corporate client, one that would elevate my business to a level I had once only dreamed of. It felt like everything was finally falling into place. One evening, I sat at my desk in my apartment sipping a cup of coffee as I scanned through the proposal documents. The soft hum of the city outside my window, the faint chatter from the streets below, felt soothing. For the first time in a long time, the sounds didn't feel like a reminder of everything I'd been running from. They were simply part of my life now. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, and I paused. I realized that, for the first time in years, I was truly at peace with myself. There was no more noise, no more family drama, no one pulling at me from all directions, asking for more, No more playing the role of the disappointed, overlooked niece. I was living my life on my terms. The phone on my desk buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a notification, and I almost ignored it. But something about it caught my eye. It was a message from a new client confirming the contract details. I smiled, my heart a little lighter. This was it. This was the life I had built. Not the one dictated by my family, but the one I had carved out for myself. I picked up my phone and responded to the client, sending over the final details. As I put it back down, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text. I didn't recognize the number. Elena, it's me, Ryan. I rolled my eyes before even reading the rest of the message. I hadn't heard from him since the gala. And now, of course, he was reaching out. It was just like them. When they needed something, when they thought they could pull me back into their world. I hesitated, but then the message continued. I don't know what's going on, but I'm sorry for everything. I know we've treated you badly and I've been an idiot, but you're family, and I miss you. Please come back. This whole thing has torn us apart. I stared at the screen, the words flashing in front of me. For a moment, I felt nothing. Not anger, not even sadness, just emptiness. I could hear Ryan's voice in my head, the way he used to manipulate, the way he could twist anything to make himself seem like the victim. But the truth was, I didn't feel sorry for them anymore. I had spent too many years bending over backward for people who had never cared about me, never really seen me for who I was. I was done. And the freedom I felt now, the peace that was filling up every corner of my life, was more than I could ever get from trying to please them again. I didn't respond. Instead, I grabbed my phone and hit block, and when the message from him disappeared from my screen, I felt the final thread between us snap. There was nothing left to say. A few minutes later, I noticed another message from Charles. It was longer, more formal, but the same theme. Elena, please reconsider. You're making a huge mistake. We are family. You can't just walk away from everything we've been through. My finger hovered over the message. The temptation to respond, to explain was still there, but it was quickly fading. The same tired arguments, the same emotional manipulation. This was my life now, and it wasn't going to be defined by anyone else's idea of what it should be. I hit block. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled, my heart light and steady. I looked around my apartment, my space, my sanctuary. It wasn't grand, it wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and that was enough. As I took another sip of coffee, I realized something. Family wasn't about blood. It wasn't about being bound to people who never treated you with the respect you deserved. It was about finding your own tribe. And I had done that, piece by piece. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving, and I had never been prouder of myself. I smiled to myself, my heart full, ready for the next chapter. Whatever it brought, I knew I would face it on my terms. And that in itself felt like the beginning of something beautiful. For the first time, I was free.